example of how if we can understand this unintentional bias and we can understand how this manifests in policies and practices, then we can critically think about it and create changes in our policies and practices which will affect our outcomes. A great example of this comes from professional orchestras. In the 1970s, professional orchestras in the United States were 95% male and 5% female. And somewhere along the line, somebody had the thought, well, maybe it's not that men are just inherently better musicians. Maybe there's something else going on there that we should investigate a little bit. And so they made a change. The top 5 orchestras in the US made a change in their practice for how they audition people. And what they did was simply have the musician audition behind a screen and had a panel listening, but they couldn't see the person. And so they created that little change in their practice of how they did auditions. It effectively eliminated the opportunity, the possibility for gender bias, and they saw a dramatic change in their outcomes in the demographic breakdown of the orchestras, changed from 5% women to 25% women. And that's a really great example of how we can think about our policies and our practices and create change in those to affect our outcomes.
So we talked a lot about statistics. We know that the world looks very different. The question for all of us is, what do we look like? And not only what do we look like, but what do we think like, right? Do we understand that diversity? Do we have the proper institutional environment where people feel like they are part of the process? This formula, I like it because, well, I'm kind of a numbers guy, but it's a straightforward formula. A gentleman by the name of Steve Kerr, he was a former GE learning officer, talked about how performance equals capacity minus interference. So whatever organization you have, you want, obviously, everyone to have maximum performance, right? We all want to do great, whether it's teaching students or selling products or services, whatever that is that you try to do. Performance is what you want. You want maximum performance from all your employees or organizational members. And we all have certain capacities, very different capacities, but the I is the key part. The I would say, if there's any takeaway here, the I is that interference. And that is when you don't feel like you can be yourself, you don't feel like your opinion matters, you name it, on and on and on and on and on. When you feel like you don't fit in, so you might be in a meeting or a brainstorming session where, well, I might have an idea, but yeah, I probably won't share it. It's the antithesis of what Richard did at Pepsi Company, right? They just won't share it. So imagine if he would have felt like, you know what? Who cares if I have an idea? Pepsi, one of the things I forgot to mention is they were really promoting an environment where they wanted everyone to feel like they owned the company. And they wanted everyone's idea. So he came forward. So imagine if someone like him just felt like, oh, my opinion doesn't matter, forget this hot Cheetos thing, that's a dumb idea. Right? So at the end of the day, it's for each of our organizations and through this institutional focus, how do we ensure that we downplay that I as much as possible, and if possible, eliminate it altogether, right?
So this morning, Terry talked about not just focusing on the problem, but beginning to focus on solutions. Where do you find those solutions? How do you get at the issues, the resources that are going to help your organization move from focusing on the problem to beginning to impact your organization by finding real solutions? We want to come alongside you as an organization to help you and your organization, whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, the education, nonprofit, or the religious community, to help you figure out where your organization is in this process, how to get at communicating those values that you have about reaching diverse people, and then what are some strategic steps that you can take to be able to address diversity and inclusion in your organization. Our Inclusion and Diversity Consulting is a new resource that we have at the Diversity Alliance that will help you with exactly that scenario.